yell at me every single day in Carline because I couldn't follow instructions, you know. But she didn't speak Spanish. If she were speaking Spanish, she would have given me the right instructions. So Mrs. Hakes is gonna miss me, I know, okay?
And Beth Hake, who was always down there rallying the kids for the sporting events, the gym. They enjoyed it, especially those overnights, which she graciously volunteered to host from the Villa auction.
You would never have any false pretenses with Beth because you knew she would see right through it. So the great thing about Beth is always that you are kind of forced to be your most genuine self, because if you are not, she'll call you on it. And so every interaction with her is just really genuine, positive, enthusiastic, and I think that's how the kids must feel too.
I always loved Miss Hake because I don't think I scored 1 point on her basketball team, but she always supported me and made me feel loved on the team.
So I always was on Miss Hake's basketball team for multiple years, and I scored some points, we played, we had fun, and Miss Hake was always very supporting.
I actually have nightmares about forgetting my gym clothes. Miss Hake.
And when I was in 5th or 6th grade, my best friend and I, Alyssa Salcido, we hated doing the mile. And whenever Miss Hake would turn her back while we were running, we would stop and kind of like, you know, pause, and then she turned back around and we'd act like we were running again. We did this the whole time just because we were so bad at it. We were bad at everything gym class. We were terrible at the rope, dodgeball. The only thing we were good at was capture the flag. So the mile is something that we cheated on.
I totally enjoyed and loved every minute coaching with Miss Hake, with my girls on their basketball team. It was such a fun experience. They all love her.
Miss Hake instilled fear in you if you didn't cheer for Xavier. I can remember her coming in like the night before the crosstown shootout. I was going, if you don't cheer for Xavier, you're gonna fail! I've been a Xavier fan ever since, even though I go to UC.
Jill Moormann, who has been absolutely wonderful. All my children who have had her absolutely love Jill, and she always has a positive perspective on things.
The thing about Jill that I will always be very grateful for, and I was reminded of this recently. I ran into a tough situation at work, and I thought to myself, gosh, I wish I could just run down the hall and talk to Jill, because whenever I would talk to Jill, she would give me, I could talk to her as much as I needed to, I could investigate both sides of an issue, she would listen very patiently, and I knew that anything I told her would stay there. And she's probably one of the best problem solvers and best people I know to go to with a problem, and I'm always grateful to her for that.
One of my favorite memories is in the youth group at church. We perform a play every year, and Miss Moormann would have us come in during lunch and recess to rehearse lines and kind of practice all of our parts. And that is one of the things that I will forever remember.
So I was the valedictorian of my class, and Jill Moormann was the only person that gave me a B ever. And the only reason that I was a joint valedictorian is because Ms. Kennevan gave Captain Harlow a B, and so we were joint valedictorians, and I love you, Jill Moormann, for that.
As each of our children, and Betsy was the oldest, embraced high school and thinking about going to high school, it was uncharted territory, and Miss Moormann was always there for each of the children, but she was there always helping, always preparing, answering questions, even the silliest questions.
Private study sessions,
private studies, whatever they needed.
One of my favorite memories of Miss Moormann's Latin class was in 8th grade, when, as part of class, we did what was called a chariot race. So the theory behind this was that we built chariots at home as students, and we went outside to the lawn and we raced them. Unfortunately, in one particular year, my chariot wasn't quite as well planned as the chariots usually were. A class member ended up falling out of the chariot, not sustaining any serious injuries, but it was a very valuable lesson. And it was just things like that that really spiced up Miss Moormann's class.
What can you say about Miss Moormann? She is like the epitome of the best teacher, best friend for each student. She's an incredible math and Latin teacher. My daughters have learned so much from her.
I have about 1 million stories about Jill Moormann. She's I would say one of the top 5 people in my life that's influenced me. It's I would say there hasn't been one week in my life that's gone by that I haven't thought about Jill Moormann since I've had her.
I was on Miss Moormann's volleyball team, and she bribed us at the beginning of the season that if we won the city champs, we would get a surprise, and we never got our surprise, but we won! But it's okay, I guess the banner counts.
When I think of Meg, what I think about is she had set me up on a blind date, and it was a very nice young woman, but the date didn't totally work out. And so she and I were, I think we were riding on a bus on some field trip, and she said, so how'd the date go? And I said, yeah, you'll like that. And she just kind of looked at me and she said, sometimes people just aren't meant for each other. And I think that was very representative of Meg.
Well, I came to Villa in pre-4, and Miss Coogan and Mrs. McDevitt were my first 2 teachers. And what I've been told was that when I was dropped off for pre-4, I said, "Bye, Mom!" And I just ran into play. And she was there with me, open arms. So it was a great time.
Meg Coogan, just very solid person. And I just happened to talk to her a couple weeks ago. And she says, why should I retire? I love coming to work every day. And you could see that in Meg. She was unsung. She didn't look for the limelight. She just came in every day and did her job and was good at it.
I liked dropping off at the Manor House, and I was always late. We never made it for the Pledge of Allegiance or the morning bell. But Mrs. Coogan would always let me come in and sit and watch, and then she would say, "They would be fine. She'll have a great day." A good way to start my day.
I just always think about how we had this in-service and she got up to speak and she had the most soothing voice and her demonstrations were so clear. And I remember just sitting there in the back of the NPR thinking to myself, this is how the kids must feel. This is great. I totally understand everything. I don't feel anxious. I feel calm. I get what she's doing.
And you know how she would practice her math games that set the foundation for math, that let my kids just over-excel in high school.
She gave me a very lovely crown in my 3rd grade time as her spelling queen, because students would come to me and ask me how to spell different words, and so she actually made a crown for me. And as lovely as I felt about it, it actually hung in my mother's kitchen until I was probably 25.
Kathy was such a level-headed person. I don't think I ever saw Kathy that she was out of sorts. Very calm, kind of the mediator, and she knew kids in and out. She knew when to, symbolically I could say, she knew when to give them a hug and when to give them, I can use that word, a kick in the butt.
One time, one of the students, the whole length, scratched the chalkboard and she lost it. She yelled. I've never seen her done that before. It was great.
Miss Finkbeiner, I loved Miss Finkbeiner. All of my children have had her at some point. And the thing I love about her, she taught them manners. She taught them how to be good people to each other.
I remember that we read in particular a book called A Day No Pigs Would Die. While we were reading that book, I remember in particular at the end, there's quite an emotional scene. And Mrs. Finkbeiner decided to read that part to us herself. But she became really overwhelmed with the emotion of that. And I remember she cried openly as we listened to her describe the penultimate scene in that book. And I remember thinking, even then, that's really neat for my teacher to be so open with us and so moved by this piece of writing. And it really showed me that this piece of art had really touched my teacher. And I was allowed to feel that same way about books and about reading. And so I really felt like she opened the world to me in that way.
You represent what is so good and right to the Villa. Teachers who care, give the extra mile, who always have a kind word, who show encouragement, and who love each and every one of our students, and we too love you so much. So please join me in raising your glass for a toast to Miss Coogan, Miss Finkbeiner, Miss Hake, and Miss Moormann. Congratulations.